Mason Greenwood, a prodigy bursting out of Manchester United's academy. Speed, precision, composure. A striker whose finish could leave even the best goalkeepers frozen. By 18, he was breaking records, dazzling fans, and rewriting the future of English football. Every touch, every goal, every run screamed potential. He seemed destined for greatness, a star to carry Manchester United into a new era. Then it all fell apart. A career suspended, a future uncertain, headlines dominated by scandal, not skill. The stadiums grew quieter. The spotlight turned cold. A world that once cheered his name now debated his future. How does a player so talented, so young, and so promising end up exiled from the game before even reaching his peak? This isn't just a story of goals and glory. It's a story of pressure, choices, and consequences. Of a prodigy whose rise was meteoric, and whose fall is still unfolding. This is the story of Mason Greenwood, his rise, his fall, and the question hanging over everything. Can he ever come back? From the streets of Bradford to the bright lights of Old Trafford, Mason Greenwood's talent was impossible to ignore. Quick feet, deadly finishing, an instinct for goal that seemed almost unnatural for a teenager. He had the composure of a veteran striker, yet the hunger of a kid chasing every opportunity. Every touch felt confident. Every run carried purpose. At 17, he made his senior debut for Manchester United. And he didn't just play, he announced himself to the world. Minutes after coming on, the net bulged. Goals against top teams. Moments that made fans jump out of their seats, commentators scramble for adjectives, and rivals shake their heads in disbelief. The football world began whispering, "This is the next English superstar." Off the pitch, Greenwood carried himself with ambition and charm. Interviews revealed a confident young man, grounded yet fearless. Social media buzzed with praise. Clubs and fans alike had started marking the arrival of a future icon. Manchester United saw not just a player, but a generational talent. Someone they could build a team around for years. The sky seemed limitless. Every goal, every assist, every flick of the boot screamed that Mason Greenwood was destined for greatness. And yet, as the world watched, no one knew how quickly that ascent could be derailed. With stardom came expectation, and the kind of pressure most 18-year-olds aren't ready for. Mason Greenwood was no longer just a teenager scoring in the youth leagues. He was a global talent. Every touch on the pitch was scrutinized. Every goal was celebrated and analyzed. Every misstep, even the smallest, was magnified. The spotlight moved fast. Social media exploded with every highlight reel. Fans, pundits, and rivals weighed in on his form, his personality, his lifestyle. Manchester United's coaching staff tried to shield him. But in the age of 24/7 coverage, no player can escape the pressure. The world wanted a superstar, and Greenwood was only human. Off the pitch, the temptations multiplied. Endorsements, fame, nightlife. He had money, attention, and access far beyond his years. Football, however, is unforgiving. Talent alone is never enough. Discipline, focus, and maturity shape careers as much as skill. Early warning signs appeared. Slight lapses in training focus. Tension with teammates during intense matches. Moments where instinct overtook tactical discipline. And while fans cheered the goals, managers quietly asked themselves, can he handle the pressure? The tension built silently. Every success was shadowed by scrutiny. Every triumph carried the weight of expectation. Mason Greenwood had everything a young footballer could dream of. But in elite football, dreams can turn fragile very quickly. The rise of a prodigy was no longer just about skill. It was about handling the world waiting to knock you down. And for Greenwood, that test was only just beginning. Then everything changed. The rise of Mason Greenwood, the prodigy, the record breaker, the future of English football, came to a sudden, shocking halt. Off the pitch, whispers turned into headlines. Allegations of assault, police involvement, immediate suspension from Manchester United. The stadiums that once roared for his goals went silent. The media frenzy was relentless. Fans were shocked. Teammates were stunned. The football world was divided. For a young man whose entire life had been about football, this was uncharted territory. The headlines no longer read, Greenwood scores a winner. They read, Mason Greenwood arrested. Manchester United suspends star striker. Every interview, every social media post, every news cycle reminded him, and the world, that nothing on the pitch could shield him now. The suspension wasn't just a pause. It was an exile, a stripping away of identity, a young career frozen in time. And the world began asking the inevitable questions. Can he return? Should he return? What happens to a talent like this after scandal? The talent never disappeared. The skill never left. But reputation, the most fragile part of a footballer's career, was gone. Suddenly, the boy who had dazzled defenders became a cautionary tale, a symbol of how quickly fortune can turn to misfortune, a reminder that in football, as in life, off-field actions can destroy everything built on the pitch. And just like that, Mason Greenwood's story became about what he hadn't scored, rather than the goals he had. The suspension lasted. Weeks turned into months. And suddenly, Mason Greenwood, once the pride of Manchester United, England, and football fans everywhere, was nowhere to be seen. Training ground sessions. Missed. Matches. Missed. The roar of the stadium. Gone. The spotlight that once shone so brightly dimmed. A prodigy frozen in time. A career paused indefinitely. Manchester United could no longer rely on him. Other clubs hesitated to get involved. Even supporters who had cheered his brilliance felt conflicted. Football is unforgiving. It rewards availability as much as ability. It celebrates talent, but only when it shows up. Greenwood had the talent. He had the vision, the instinct, the composure. But he was invisible. A star in exile. Months turned into uncertainty. The young man who once scored freely against top defenders now struggled against time itself. The rhythm of professional football, the sharp passes, the instinctive finishes, the teamwork, could not survive a prolonged absence. And the harsh truth became clear. Football moves on. New talents rise. Old headlines fade. Opportunities disappear. Mason Greenwood didn't fall in one dramatic moment. There was no catastrophic match or single error that ended his rise. He faded. From Champions League nights under the floodlights, to quiet stadiums where the cameras barely lingered. And that is how careers die quietly, how legends vanish not with scandalous noise, but in the silence of absence. Now, the questions dominate every conversation about Mason Greenwood. Can he come back? Can he rebuild trust, reputation, and form? Can the world of football forgive? And can he forgive himself? The raw talent is still there. The finishing touch, the composure in front of goal, the instinctive movement, all the qualities that made him a prodigy remain intact. But football is more than raw skill. It's discipline, it's character, it's timing, it's the ability to balance fame, pressure, and responsibility. Greenwood's story is unfinished, but it is already a cautionary tale, a reminder that promise can be fragile, and the line between stardom and exile can be thinner than we imagine. Some will say he is a victim of circumstance, a young man overwhelmed by fame, pressure, and mistakes. Others will say he is responsible for his own downfall, that no amount of talent can survive poor decisions without accountability. What is undeniable is that the road ahead will be harder than any defender he ever faced. The stage is set, but the spotlight may never fully return. And yet, hope remains, however faint. Redemption is possible in football, but only for those willing to confront the mistakes, rebuild their character, and embrace the discipline they once ignored. For Mason Greenwood, the question isn't just if he can play again. It's whether he can rise above the shadows of his past and reclaim a career that once promised so much. Because football will always forgive brilliance, but it will never forgive absence, neglect, or the failure to grow. Mason Greenwood's story is not just about goals, assists, or records. It's about promise interrupted, a talent bright enough to light stadiums, yet fragile enough to flicker and fade. He was a boy who dreamed of glory, a prodigy who carried the hopes of a nation on his shoulders. And in a blink, the cheers became whispers, the spotlight turned cold, and the path to greatness disappeared into uncertainty. Football didn't destroy Greenwood. It exposed him. It exposed the fragility of youth, the weight of fame, and the consequences of choices made too early, too fast. And that is the tragedy. A career that once promised immortality now hangs in the balance, a story unfinished, a lesson in talent, responsibility, and the price of mistakes. Yet, even in silence, there is a a faint spark that refuses to die. Can Mason Greenwood rise again? Or will he remain a star frozen in time? A warning of how quickly brilliance can be eclipsed. In football, as in life, it is never just about skill. It is about growth, discipline, redemption, and only time will tell if this fallen star will shine once more. A career once destined for greatness, now frozen in uncertainty. Was Mason Greenwood a victim of circumstance, or the architect of his own downfall? Tell us your verdict in the comments. We want to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to Iconic Era, where football's greatest stories are told without filters, and legends are remembered for what they were, and what they could have been. Thanks for watching. See you in the next era. Bye.